Okay, let's make a quick mic check. Yeah, works pretty fine. We start in a bit. Okay, and welcome to all new followers. Thank you for following. Yeah, and let's, I guess, start where we left off. Yeah. Okay, so today's stream is going to be pretty short. Yeah, also yesterday's stream was cut short. My computer is kind of frozen, like almost at the end of the stream. Like I wanted to already stop streaming, like, and almost click the button stop streaming, and right in this moment or a little bit earlier, it actually happened. So computer was frozen, and I actually was pretty scared that I could lose the whole stream recording. but I didn't. It's already on my channel, uploaded, and cool. So good thing that I make recording in MKV format, which actually allows it to make sure that I don't lose recording even if there's going to be a power issues with the computer, or it just basically is going to be frozen. So using this format, it actually beneficial and pretty safe. I still kind of had to make some manipulations to make it right, because file was not readable properly, but in the end I recovered lost stream, and cool. So yeah, and also I lost a little bit of a progress, about less than 10 minutes, so I actually redid a couple of things. Basically I named layers proper way. I remake a couple of things. Basically the whole last step of this was lost, and I needed to remake this or redo this. So yeah, basically yesterday's I showed how to project characters in perspective in order to save their proportions properly and translate them well. Actually, the cool thing that I actually noticed after I translated this, that where our composition. So yeah, the thing that I'm actually noticed that I was pretty close depicting height by eye. As you see, let's make it a little bit less obvious. Yeah, so as you can see, when I created these proportions by eye using only like eye measurement, I was pretty close to what eventually was projected in a proper way. This one a little bit smaller, it's going to be a little bit smaller, and also since he is going to be Bum is going to be sitting on a chair, he definitely not going to be looking like this, because again, wait a minute, so we're not using a eraser, we're actually using this one. Let's just check our pressure sensitivity, because after yesterday's froze, something happened with pressure sensitivity. It didn't work properly. Something happened with the driver, but things seem to be working fine, which is a cool thing. Yes, so yeah. Compositional flow. So yeah, basically I stayed in these proportions approximately, which is pretty cool thing. The only so I kinda was a little bit off right here, but again, since he is tilted, I was pretty close. And right here, of course, I was too far, because from what it is, in terms of a height, yes, he's going to be right here, but in terms of a size, he's going to be much smaller, because again, he sits on a chair, he's not like on the ground. And right here I actually showcased him like he is sitting on the ground, but he's going to be sitting on a chair, so he's going to be much smaller. Again, because he is much deeper in space. This is one of the problems when you're working using only your eye measurements without any like perspective rules and whatever. You usually the the deeper perspective gets, or the deeper in space you go, the more I think you will make mistakes, because again, there's always foreshortening, there's always this element, and it's pretty hard to analyze this and showcase it like from the get-go. Usually you need practice this a lot, and even then you will still make a little bit of mistakes. And also what I did outside of the stream, because again I lost less 10 minutes, basically I created two separate layers for our see-through. So yeah, right now we can see through these things. Yeah, these constructional lines that show us see-through objects. So yeah, basically I just added additional layer where I just erase them, and to make things cleaner. That's the only thing that I did, nothing like crazy. And also I made a little bit better see-through for the table. So where it is. So yeah, this is our see-through for the table. I made it a little bit more obvious that like these lines that they're in the back by erasing them, or by muting their colors a little bit, or not colors but value. So yeah, and again, since we don't have that much time to since we don't have that much time today, let's just go right away to next steps. So we are going to work with not see-through things, we don't need them for now. We are going to work with clean versions. So the next thing that we need to do is we actually work on characters. Finally, we need to establish their size, and we already know their height, and now we need to figure out what type of primitives we are going to use for showcasing them in this particular stage. Because again, one of the reasons why I'm actually doing this, working with the simple primitives before we go to details, because this is going to be a beneficial thing for us when we are going to encounter our next stage. It's not like next stage, but stage after the next stage, and it's going to be a stage of value and color sketching, where initially we are going to work with trying to understand where to put light, how this light is going to be interact with our objects and subjects in a scene, and since it's going to be pretty complicated stuff to do, the more simpler our surroundings are, the better we will I don't know, how do you probably say it? Come on. Wait a minute. No, this is not the right thing. Yeah, this is more likely. Yeah, so it basically will help us to handle these problems better, because again, everything about light is pretty complex. You need to establish where you will put where you will put casting shadows, for instance. You need to understand, depending on where light is dropping, if casting shadow is going to fall and intersect with different objects, it definitely could create some type of intersections, like for instance right here. And so yeah, and everything that works with these casting shadows is actually going to be we need to kind of have much more complex or much less complex objects to do this properly, because again, the more complexity object has, the harder it's going to be to showcase this problem. That's one of the reasons why I'm working on these in a simple way, to make lighting stage much more easier to handle. Okay, so presume. Let's focus. We don't have that much time. I need to focus. So yeah, again, we established we're finishing with proportions and in the final perspective. So we established the placement for the statues on the left side and on the right side of the walls. We established where chairs are, where the table is, where the characters sitting. We established their height, which will help us to properly figure out what type of primitives and what size of the primitive we're going to use. And the next thing is basically finish with the characters. So let's just draw them right here with the simple primitives, and then probably it would be a good thing to establish some type of silhouette for the Quintessa. But again, the problem is I'm still not sure how I will make Quintessa the Quintessa silhouette, because it's going to be a pretty hard thing to do. It's basically going to be depending on the design stage. So let's just leave it to the design stage. Right now I know that this primitive under the table represents approximate Quintessa's size in terms of height and in terms of the width of this table. So these things basically are telling us it's like for these statues. So we have this limited space to put into this space our statues. This is a horrible example of it, but again, yeah, so this limited space for us is actually something that will help us to kind of create these statues, and we're going to try to put the statues inside this cube. The same for the Quintessa. Yeah. Minko. Focus. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, and of course the next thing that we are going to do after we depict characters, I hope I managed to do this today. It's basically trying to figure out where to put Transformers pieces throughout our composition. Yeah, so we basically need to figure out where to put them. It's going to be based on this composition that we were created, and it actually kind of works. So even if we actually add right here on foreground this piece it's going to be pretty cool. Again, the whole reason to adding it right here to distract viewers' attention from going outside of the canvas. So if we're not putting right here something, then this line represented by our statue will basically direct viewers' eye from the page. We need to focus viewers' page inside. So if viewers go into, for instance, go here, we need to make sure that our viewer will turn right and go to our main characters to create this loop. The same goes for this angle. It's not necessarily I think about adding somewhere here, because in most cases there's an empty space there, and I don't think that we need necessarily to put something right here. It all will be depending. If we will put something right here, it's going to depend on compositional balance. So if I need to add something there, then it's going to be for the compositional balance. So yeah, I guess let's just start. And also, it would not be a bad idea to showcase plates, but again, we already have them right here. And also, as I said before, I hope I said it. If I'm not, I'm kind of going to repeat myself. I don't want to create interactions. So I don't want to put any table accessories until I will make sure how Angry Birds going to interact with these accessories. Because again, if I will put them right like I did right here, then it already creates some type of I don't know. So it makes me think that since these cups and plates already on the table, they're not going to interact with them. So, and I basically make them, because of this, not interacting with these table accessories. But I kind of want them interact with table accessories. Not everyone is going to do so, but again, we will think about that on a planning poses stage, which is going to be pretty soon. So yeah, let's just go right into things. Whew. Make sure that we don't have an assistant, because we kind of don't need that. And not bad if we will have some type of example of our characters to analyze their shapes, because again, we need to figure out what type of primitives will represent our characters, and for that we need to know their approximate sizes and basic shapes. Okay, I think now I actually can place this right here. I'm going to use it since I already translated our character. So yeah, these things are going to be our basic shapes. So again, right here is kind of a modified sphere. in most cases. Right here is pretty complex shape, banana shape character. We're not going to focus probably on his additional shapes. We will try to see only basic shape, only the shapes that are important to showcase right here. And based on these shapes also have to be already have dynamics. If they are going to have dynamics, it will help us to create much more appealing pose. Because if we will just draw these like this, and like this, and like this, yeah, it's kind of too vertical. It doesn't have any dynamics, and it will restrict us when we're going to trying to pose these characters. If we can, we need to implement gesture from the earliest stages, and even at this stage we always can bend our primitives. We always can make our primitives a little bit modified in terms of a dynamic, so they not necessarily have to be like complete circle or like ideal. So ideal. So yeah, this looks bad. How? Really? Ellipse. So instead of like drawing perfect ellipses and circles, we would rather try to make these more dynamic. At least I will try to do it. So yeah, let's start with bubbles. So bubbles again has somewhat conic shape, a little bit modified conic shape, like the end of the bullet. And in terms of a dynamic, I think this bullet shape is going to be a little tilted right here. So like creating this simplistic tilt, it already creates dynamic. So let's just try to put this type of shape right here in a proper way. So there's still a question about how to depict them, either standing on a chair or sitting on a chair. It's still a problem to address. I don't know how to properly address it at this stage, because again, at this stage we are not thinking about details, we're thinking about overall shapes. And I guess if I would draw, for instance, a big guy, I would probably draw not just simple circle and cutting off his legs, but trying to make overall shape like this, to make this shape contain his legs. That way would be probably better, but I don't know. Let's just try and see what's going to look best. And again, it almost I know this is a different layer. Let's just go to our character base. This is character placement. This is a gesture overlay. No, let's just leave gesture overlay for later. We will use it definitely. This layer is going to call the character shapes. I don't know. Actually, this is. Oh, wait a minute. We already have. No, this is character placement. So character placement we already have. This one's going to be called character. How to call it? I know that this is a really important thing to do, but still want to call it somehow. Let's just call it shapes. I don't know, character shapes. And let's just save. Oh no, I forgot to launch. Yeah, I forgot to launch timer. How properly reset it, so let's just reset it. So we are streaming already about 32 minutes. Let's just call it 30. Yep, and start. Come on. Yeah. So now timer is working properly. I kind of forgot about it. Again, this stream is probably going to be about 2 hours. We already gone through the 30-minute mark. Maybe if I will feel in a rush or feel the rush, I will continue to throughout another half an hour or another hour, but we'll see how work is going to develop. Again, at the beginning it's always kind of slow, and I'm trying to put my mind into work because again I work on this only inside of the stream, and it's pretty hard sometimes to kind of put your mind into this work and focus on it and try to do. Also, we probably could change this because again, this direction is basically showcasing the whole idea where Bubbles is going to reach. So it's just basically creating this type of movement. It not necessarily means that his head is going to be, well, at least his part of his head, because they don't have separate head body things. They're gonna work as a whole. So yeah, it not necessarily means that this is his head, and I think when we are going to work with the pose, it's going to look more like this. Because again, Bubbles is trying to reach. Yeah, he's going to try to reach a cup of tea, and in order to do it, dynamic is going to be pretty different. I don't know, maybe I would better showcase it like this. Yeah, let's just make dynamics that going to be close to where their body is actually directed. So when we talk about Bubbles, this is actually where his or her body is going to be directed. Yeah, I think this is going to be better. Again, this actually will help us to create proper composition, because I actually wanted to for Bubbles to actually kind of create some type of continuous flow. Moving towards red. So I guess let's leave it at this. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, basically Bubbles is trying to reach our, and again, it seemed like it has to be smaller because I actually created it pretty big. Hey, wait a minute. Is there something outside of this? Let's delete it. Yeah, this is closer to bubbles, and also a little bit more. Yeah, so this will do. Again, if bubble is going to be sitting on standing, I think if you're trying to reach something, it's better if you actually stand. But we will think about poses a little bit later. Again, I'm kind of already picturing some type of pose, and how would I actually depict this pose or showcase this pose. And again, there's going to be for now a little bit of tangent, bunch of tangents going to be right here, because again, this is not like finished product, so a little bit of tangent is acceptable at this stage, because these are just shapes. We are definitely change them, and when we're going to change their silhouettes, we're going to work on avoiding tangents like these, whatever. So let's just continue. So bubbles is going to be approximately this type of shape, had this type of shape. So again, it's somewhat like distorted conic shape. Next primitive that we're going to try to figure out, this one's going to be definitely the last one, because he is the hardest one to figure out in terms of a basic shape. Next one I think is going to be red. Red is actually not that elliptical. Actually, if we are going to see these characters much closer, take a closer look at them, they're not that elliptical, so they're a little bit more squarish. So yeah, they are ellipses. And so for instance, for this one too, in the movie he's actually more cubical. I don't know how to say it properly. So he less curved and more like something like this. So it like slightest angle is present. We didn't see it at the beginning, because again, when you're working on studying designs, you not always see things right away. And for instance, when I studied them at the beginning, I didn't saw these things. I actually tried to see them as simple shapes. But the more I work with them, these characters, and the more I analyze them and their designs, the more I am aware of small changes in their design. Again, it's probably always comes to the experience. The more experience you have, the better you will pinpoint these small changes. Okay, in terms of poses of this character, so since our wall and our statue are tilted, has pretty big tilt, it's kind of logically you want to create this tilt for this character too, like he's trying to reach something on the table, or he's just sitting and I don't know. So I need to figure out what type of dynamic for the simple shape I would use. So okay, we know that bubbles has to depict freedom, and we kind of showcased freedom right here, because again, if the motion is going to go right here, so yeah, it's kind of pretty free. the angry one has to showcase tension. So tension is, as we talked about, has to be directed. So the motion of the tension has to be directed inwards. So inside the character. Or if it's mixed tension that has some type of intentional reactions, potential intentional reaction, then we would use outward motion. So of course inward motion would be like this. Outward motion probably would look like this, something. So he would be more intentionally directed to there. So I think let's just stick to the tension for now, to the tension. So don't forget that how I actually create tension, I'm going to create right here. The feeling like he is sitting and he's like, oh. So if this would be his eyes, yeah, basically that's how I'm kind of picturing it. So he's pretty upset, or he's pretty angry, and he's kind of, I don't know. Oh, wait a minute, let's just try to create angry face. Try to see how this looks. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Yeah, this type of dynamic. So right here we added a little bit of dynamic by creating this type of, like he's pretty upset or angry. So this way I will create tension. So then I could use, of course, add wings to make this tension seem more evident. His legs would be somewhere right here. He kind of could sit and gather himself, and trying to gather himself by touching the table. This is one of the ideas that kind of could be explored on opposing stages. Oh, come on. I run out. We then do operations. Again, we don't think about tangents too much. There are present, for instance, right here at the table, but and also I would probably move it a little bit closer to the table. Again, they're not going to be right in the center. They're definitely going to be a little bit closer to the table because their legs has to be somewhere there. So yeah, I think that looks pretty normal. So that way, when we are going to create design elements right here, they're actually going to showcase the proper flow. The same for this. It's going to create flow that goes right here. Also, we're going to create flow by showcasing where they look. So the eye direction. All these things we're going to do. So yeah, the angry man is ready. Yeah, I make him a little bit bigger. Let's just make him a little bit smaller probably. We want to use these proportions that we are established earlier. it will definitely help us along the way. So yeah. Next is the big one. The big one. I hope everything's working properly. I don't know. Yesterday's and today actually was and is pretty hectic days. That's why I can not that focus on everything. Yeah, so and let's just try to make our silhouette for our big guy. So the hardest thing to showcase, so the circle or the sphere is the hardest, I think, shape of all or form of all to actually depict some type of motion, because again, it's round. This one is modified, and therefore we can showcase some type of motion right here. This one too, it's kind of bean shape. It's pretty easy to determine some type of motion right here, but when we work with the circles, it's not that easy, because circles and spheres, it's pretty hard to add motion to them of some kind. So in most cases you just basically draw a circle and that's it. But I will try to actually make something out of it. Okay, if we are going to put it a little bit closer, it actually gets larger. This is one of the things to consider. Slightly, but gets larger. So again, if it's right on the center, it has to be smaller, but if it's closer, it's going to be larger. Since we're going to put the big one much more closer, because again, it's not, I don't think that it is convenient for a sphere like character to sit on something like this. It's pretty awkward because again, because of the spherical shape. Because as we know, if we put sphere on a flat surface, sphere usually would not stay at the same place. Depending on how tilted this surface is, sphere usually will be moving somewhere. It's not going to stand in one place. Eventually it will stop, but again, it's pretty hard for sphere to settle down. Okay, let's just put it somewhere right here. And again, right here, I'm creating dynamics by making a little bit of distortion in this sphere. It's not that evident for now, but in a moment I will reflect the sphere, or not reflect, but do this, and now it becomes much more evident. So dynamic, it actually going somewhere right here. So I'm kind of a little bit distorted, created a little bit distorted sphere. It's not like complete round. Again, if we would compare it to complete round sphere, it's like this. Of course, this one doesn't have any dynamics, and this one has. It's still, there's not much difference between them. So it's slight difference in millimeter or somewhat, and it already creates a different result. The whole thing about design, again, it's too subtle. So I think everything that it comes to art is pretty subtle. No matter what you're doing, working with values and trying to figure out what type of values to use, it's usually more subtle way to you use more subtle ways to showcase value. Of course, yes, when you want to create a big so the zones of different contrasts to create a good division in between them, then it's not that subtle. But again, when you work with the close values, subtlety usually is the thing that makes everything look realistic. Because again, if you would study the work of old masters, you would probably know what I'm talking about, because again, they're used subtle values and colors to showcase this type of reality. Boogaroo, for instance, he was one of them who actually used this type of subtlety, and a bunch of others, Sergeant and others. So they're actually kind of all the reason why they're created so awesome works in terms of a realism and rendering and whatever. So it's because they knew how to work with the subtleties. And yeah, okay, so yeah, I guess this is pretty normal way to picture him. Again, he's much closer, so that's why he is not right here. Maybe I need to make it a little bit much bigger. I'll just make it bigger. Again, it will eventually benefit us, because as I told before, I need to create some type of silhouette right here, and since the statue is going to be going to create something like this, something like I will think about the silhouette later, but again, it's not going to be like the straight cube. Definitely will benefit if we'll make him bigger. And the last thing that we're going to do in terms of a character shapes is the hardest one, our banana shaped character. Hello, banana shaped character. Hello, Chuck. You are challenging piece to work with. So, since he is crazy, I wanted to showcase his craziness through crazy dynamics of his body. So I would definitely showcase his dynamic as pretty crazy one. So something like this probably would work. I'll just try to, and since there's going to be a pretty big of a tilt, I think it would be best if we would create some type of measurement to control it. Ideally, that would be a pretty cool idea if I would place him, for instance, right here and make Chuck interact or create overlaps with these characters. This would be probably an interesting way to showcase him, but the problem is it wouldn't work because it actually creates unbalanced composition. So I think I will make them separate from each other, because again, if I put Chuck and make him as overlap, it actually creates pretty heavy area right here, and we don't need to put more heaviness to this area. Since this is our compositional center, if we're talking about our focal point, our main focus. So our main focus is going to be somewhere right here, probably, maybe somewhere right here. And this actually creates pretty balanced way to showcase him. But if we will put Chuck right here, it actually kind of overweights everything to the left, to the right, and then it completely changes our compositional center, which is not the thing that I wanted to do. I don't want to change compositional center. I like what I'm seeing right now. Yeah, so I guess he will be crazy, but I will try to make him contained. Crazy contained. I don't know. So he's going to be pretty close. It's not particularly banana shape, but again. Also, I wanted to make a little bit of announcement regarding my channel. Next week, starting from Monday, I actually planning to launch additional extension or additional kind of part of the channel. So not creative, but more game oriented. The reason being is I'm kind of fan of the Magic the Gathering, and not that long ago was announced that sooner will be launched Magic Arena, Magic the Gathering Arena, and I kinda already signed in for the beta and closed beta and waiting for it to waiting for an answer from closed beta. And basically before this game will be out, which is going to be, as I read, approximately in the next year, somewhat at the beginning of the next year, I wanted to actually study Magic the Gathering on much more constant basis. I like this game, but I don't have that much time to play it, and streaming it would be a pretty good idea. That way I will play and enjoy the game that I like, and I will learn how to play this game better. I'm not that good at Magic the Gathering. Again, I played it about, I don't know, maybe 5 years, maybe more. No, approximately 5 years ago, I actually kind of discovered Magic the Gathering for myself. But yeah, and I kind of fell in love with Magic the Gathering from the first game that I played, and the first game was Magic the Gathering 2000 Duels of Planeswalkers 2012, which was launched on Steam, PC, and I kind of get hooked up from the first match that I played. The deepness of this game will actually kind of make me love card games and tabletop games overall. And it actually inspired me to create my own tabletop games, which is going to be in the nearest future on my channel. And one of the reasons why I actually want to stream Magic the Gathering, in addition to my creative content, is to study Magic the Gathering, because by studying it, I will learn new mechanics, new ways to create interesting turns, interesting ways to play, and that way my personal game development will be, I guess, will benefit from it. So it's not like I'm going to play Magic only for the sake of playing it. No, I actually going to study it. I will learn to play it. I will keep I will learn a bunch of things that I could use in my own games. Not necessarily just ripping off everything that Magic has, no, but instead like learning on mechanics that Magic actually has and trying to create something of your own. And yeah, I'm going to stream mostly Magic duels and all Magic games that were were produced on PC, except Magic Online, because it's pretty pricey thing to play. Yeah, so basically I'm planning to stream Magic 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, and duels. And I'm going to stream them. I will create some type of schedule around them. I will try to stream them every day. Again, schedule will be made on this weekend, and yeah. So basically, from Monday, on Monday I will start to stream Magic the Gathering, and now my channel is going to be going to have additional variety to it. So I'm not going to create only creative content, but I kind of wanted to mix with the game content, because again, Twitch is the game platform mostly. There are a bunch of creators, but as we know, gamers on Twitch is much bigger of an audience. So why not stream the game that I love and want to play? So yeah, I guess it's pretty cool. The only thing I kind of need to explore how actually I would place Chuck. No, he's going to. I need to showcase some type of craziness into him, and again, craziness has to be directed. Yeah, again, this character is going to be crazy hard to draw or even place him properly. Oh, come on. Why you wouldn't delete this? So let's just take a quick look on references. What type of craziness I would depict for Chuck? In most cases, Chuck is actually looks like this. So he almost never bends like this. But the problem is, if I create this type of bend, then it will create the opposite direction from where I'm actually looking for. So I need to figure out in what type of pose I would put him to maintain this type of craziness, but at the same time create proper direction. So I think something like this would be appropriate. Probably. So I want for Chuck to be excited, and one of the ways how I could actually showcase, we kind of don't forget about his tail, which is going to be somewhere right here, which will create direction that will goes right here. And all in all, I wanted to depict his excitement and craziness. So he has to be some type of bubbly character that, not like bubbles, yeah, that will create a interesting dynamics, somewhat chaotic dynamics, which will be all over the place. That's why I would probably left this pose. I'll just get rid of this for now. But yeah, something like this. Again, I would not necessarily place him closer to the table, because again, it will create too much of a, I don't like how this looks. Yeah, he needs to be a little bit far from the table. He basically will be the only one who actually not interact with the table itself. So this one a little bit overlapping. The table creates overlapping. For this character, table creates overlapping. This character overlapping the table. But this character, it's like in its own world. And again, we not would probably wanted to use in overlapping with this type of, with this extreme perspective at this particular instance. I think, yeah, it would not look good. So yeah, that way I'm actually kind of where our flow. Oh, come on, where is it? So this is our areas, this is our compositional flow, and let's just make it a little more evident by turning on background, and let's just get rid of our characters composition. Yeah, so this is it. Let's just, oh no, also don't forget that Chuck is not that big. He's actually, let's just make him a little more, yeah, like this. This way I would probably need to increase its rotation. So yeah, that way his excitement is going to be, again, all over the place. His tail is going to direct our view and create where our flow, I lost it. Oh, here it is. Let's go to white, let's just save. And let's turn off these characters since we don't need them anymore. Characters, where are they? Here it is. Nope, only a character base. Okay, so flow. So let's just again analyze our flow and if it's working now with these symbol shapes. So again, this one is going to still direct the viewer's attention to this character, and this statue will help to do this by creating additional pointing. So it's going to point towards our character. This character is going to look at this one. This is definitely, and there's two ways to create flow right here. Is first thing that is going to create flow, this perspective line. So this already creates flow between them. So yeah, and when I will create eyes for him and direct his attention to this character and his craziness, then it's going to be pretty cool. This one stays inside our main area of focus. So again, we don't want for the viewer to go right here outside of these frames. That way we need to create some type of cyclic motion inside of this area. And so far everything that I did, it actually works, and it's not allowing viewer go from our page. So compositions kind of stays inside of this area. Okay, so this one again is going to look at this one. I will think how to place his wings. Placing wings is actually going to be pretty interesting thing to do, because I would want it again to look crazy as possible, but at the same time we need to again think about cycling motion, and not just put like wing right there to point the viewer's eye from the page. We don't need that, so we actually will think smarter about creating character pose. Okay, what else? Again, if I would put this character right here, then it would lead us from the page, supposedly. But right now, by placing this character right like this, it actually stays inside, because again, if this thing will direct the viewer's eye into the statue, but then the viewer's eye will not go outside of this, because statue will lead us right here, and still is going to be some type of cyclic motion. Either it goes right here or whatever. So either it will go right here. So you will not go outside of this page, because again, right here is nothing interesting for the viewer to see, and therefore he or she will not go outside of the page. At least we will try to do everything in our power to make this happen, just to make viewers to stay inside this circle or area. So yeah, again, when I will create his tail, it definitely going to look right here, so it will create again some type of additional motion. What else? This character is going to be tilted a little bit right here, so which will supposedly create some type of motion, or it's going to look more like this, like he's, I don't know, yeah, something like this. So he's going to create motion right here. So again, as I said, this one is going to create motion right here. One motion is going to go right here by creating his wing, which is going to try to reach cup of tea. I will think about creating this type of motion. I still gonna leave this, but I will think about it. And this one is going to create, basically, since he's going to look at the big one, again, he will create this type of motion. And he also, by his body, going to create this type of motion, which will lead us to create some type of flow on our table that will lead us to characters and create interesting pathways in between them. Again, it looks like a mess, but the problem is we know that every viewer is a different human being, and different people see things differently, and one could go this way, for instance, this way, this way, this way, this way. The other person would start it from here and actually go like this, and took a different path. So basically every person will choose a different path to follow when we talk about how they perceive what they see. It's true to life, it's true to artwork and whatever we encounter in our lives. Every human looks differently or views something differently in terms of from where this person will start and where this person will finish looking. That's why I'm trying to kind of analyze as much pathways as possible, because I still not going to analyze all of them, because again, we're not on that stage that we can analyze like all of them. It will be much closer to the final stage where we're going to add rendering and we're work on materials, where we are going to support these flows by properly placing materials, textures, and etc. We're going to work on rendering areas. So right now we already have our compositional areas and so-called focal areas that revolves around focus. But then but soon we are going to work with rendering areas. So we are going to create rendering fall off when the closest to our primary focus we are, the more detailed rendering we are going to have. The furthest we go, less detail we have. And it actually is going to be controlled by these areas. So these areas will going to help us even create and understand where and how much detail we are going to put in terms of a rendering in final stage. So it will help us to plan materials, it will help us to plan textures, because again, we would probably don't need to create detailed textures from this area at all. It has to be muted as possible. For this area, we would probably not work with the textures too much. They still have to be present at least, or suggested, but we're not going to detail the textures. This area would probably use more textures, because again, this is our characters and they have to have textures. Second area would probably have less textures, because again, since Angry Birds actually our primary focus, we will create texture contrast. So whatever is on the table doesn't have to attract that much attention from Angry Birds. That way, and by creating contrast with textures, by for instance making less textures right here, or less evident textures on the table and table accessories, and more textures on Angry Birds themselves. So that way we actually will create pretty interesting contrast. Again, I will work with this later. I definitely think that I'm not going to manage to finish it to the deadline of October 19th, because again, I want to make this work as best as possible. And again, when you're trying to create work and as best as you can in given time frames, it usually takes time. And the more you put into work, the more time it takes. And since I'm streaming and trying to talk and it actually kind of makes things a little bit longer. But I like this format. It's something that actually helps me as well when I'm talking to. Usually, I would normally talk to myself and trying to analyze these things in my head, like where I am going to put this one, where I'm going to put this one. And usually I'm actually just turn on music, and music kind of distracts me from thinking, because again, music usually is suppressing consciousness and makes unconsciousness to be present more. And where unconsciousness is present, you're usually not that thoughtful. You just working inside some type of inspiration mode or improvisation mode. But in order to actually create this type of analytical thinking, like I'm doing right now, you need pretty calm atmosphere. You would probably turn off the music. You would probably get rid of all distractions. Or if you would put music, this music is going to be something non-destructive, so you don't have to be distracted by this music. Because usually when I'm listening to music that I like, which I of course can't showcase on the streams because it will create copyright issues. There's a bunch of lyrics in music that I'm listening, and I'm kind of starting to sing these lyrics, and this actually creates another distraction for me, which kind of distract me always from what I'm doing. That's one of the reasons why I'm decided streaming. Right now I'm not listening to any music. I'm not even hearing what music is playing right now. I'm sitting in complete silence and trying to think, trying to analyze, and trying to put a couple of words together in English, which is pretty hard for me because again, I'm not that experienced in speaking English. I understand English pretty well, but unfortunately I'm not that good at speaking it. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, I guess right now I need to make a little quick break. So, and after a quick break, I guess we will continue to work on next part of the stage. I'll just turn on our "we'll be back in a minute" thing. So yeah, let's just save, and I will be back in a minute, and then we will continue. I'm back. Let's continue. So, what's the next stage? Let's just check quick check. Let's check my list. So yeah, we are created statues. Primitive for the statues. It didn't kill our flow. It actually kind of supports our flow even more, which is a cool thing. Again, as I said before, if things works at this stage, then they will definitely work in the later stages. And again, manipulate with changes and make things work. It's much easier at this stage. That's why we actually spending that much time on this stage. Usually in real world, of course, when you work on commissions or with your clients, you would probably didn't spend that much time on it. But again, since we are working on a free project that we completely control when we're going to do these things and how and what type of quality we want, that's when it actually becomes pretty cool, because you kind of choosing for yourself all these rules and how long you're going to create work. You still have to create for yourself some type of grounds or some type of rules, because again, that way you could create work even couple of years. And I kind of been before in this type of stages. I have a couple of projects that I'm still working on throughout all these years, and to create these projects, normally it would took me, of course, less time, but because I tried to make them the best way possible, I always find something to work on in terms of these projects, and they are kind of became infinite projects that I'm constantly working on, and never finish them. This can at some point it actually becomes a little bit frustrating. I think in time I will show you these projects, or some type of sneak peek to these projects. The whole thing, and one of the reasons why I'm actually working on these projects a long period of time, it's because these projects are too personal to me, and I want them to be as deep as possible. And like I make these type of analysis for these projects on much more deeper stages. I try to control every part of the project. I try to justify every object placement, every simple thing, and to make it ideal. Of course, I'm not going to probably make this ideal, but I want to make everything everything in my power to make project as good as possible. And that's why these projects that I'm working on like pretty long time, and I'm still did not finish them, are still in development, because they are something that, I don't know, pretty close to me, and I want them to be good. I want them to be deep. I want them to be serious. And so I'm not creating them for the sake of entertaining. I'm creating them for the sake of helping people to realize something that they didn't particularly realized before, and likes to open eyes on something new and something like that. So basically to raise some type of awareness, I don't know, about these problems. Yeah, so these projects that I'm working on, like, besides they're pretty serious, they're not that funny, they are somewhat depressing, but in every of these projects, behind depression is actually hides a hope, some type of hope to better things, and how to get rid of this hopeless state, and to move on to better things. So yeah, basically I will try to implement, and I would definitely create these type of works, like serious works. This one is more comedic, for me, and this is like the first comedic work that I actually working on, so that's why it's kind of a little bit uncomfortable to work with these type of things. I haven't planned a bunch of comedic works or somewhat unserious works or projects, but I didn't like spend that much time on working on them. So yeah, but for now I'm on streams. I will be usually show after I will finish this project, I will start to work on single projects. I have already a couple ideas. I'm not going to resurrect my old projects. I will save it for later. Instead, I will be working on completely new projects. I will going to figure out how to start with the beginning stages, like the idea, and go through all stages until finalization. Next projects are going to be something similar to this stream. The only difference is going to be it's going to be much more controlled and much more organized way, because right now I'm definitely not that organized. I didn't manage to prepare before streaming properly to make these things work, so most of these things was kind of, yeah, I'm kind of figuring out things on a go, trying to understand how to work with things. Future projects definitely going to be much more organized, will be much more organized way, and I hope I will gain some experience in streaming, kind of adjust to it, start to talk a little bit better, perhaps. I hope so. I'm studying English constantly, so trying to learn new things to make my vocabulary, to extend my vocabulary, work on grammar and etc. So I'm constantly trying to push myself and to create and to provide quality content that I want to provide. So yeah, where we are. So yeah, basically I finished working on statues, I finished working on characters, and the last thing that we are going to do at this stage is to try to depict where we would place our transformer parts, and also trying to already right now figure out how we would, what type of primitives we would probably use for these transformer parts. So these transformer parts has to the only how do you properly save? Wait a minute. Yeah, condition. Remember, so the only condition that is going to be controlled, that will help us control and understand transformer parts shape. Let's just call it setting shapes, because basically it's setting shapes. Yeah. So the only thing that will help us to understand how transformer parts is going to look and where they are going to be placed is the condition of after the battle. So this condition that these actions or the consequence of these actions took place after the battle, after Angry Birds actually slayed Transformers, that will basically be the thing that will control my mind while I'm going to work on these. So I guess I don't need these. Yeah, we kind of depicted how they look already, which is a good thing. Okay, let's just get rid of unnecessary layers. Okay, we don't need I don't know. We'll probably need area layer, and we'll think about it. We don't need background layer, definitely, but we would probably need this area layer and flow layer. That actually means that we need to use part of the background layer. Let's just make it less opaque. Yeah, that way we see where we could place these transformer parts to make this motion work. Setting shapes. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is our compositional flow. The only thing that I wanted to do is just place these on there. Okay, where they have to be, they have to be. Do not confuse. So yeah, let's just start. Okay. Basically, in terms of the placement of the transformer parts, it's actually a pretty hard thing to figure out where to properly place them, because again, as I said before, when you work with your compositions, you wouldn't probably, so at least in my opinion, you have to try to justify presence of every object that and subject that you have in a scene. So I know that inexperienced artists usually place a bunch of unnecessary things in their composition in order to just fill the space. They're not necessarily trying to justify why this thing is right here. So let's just put this for the sake of putting it right there. Usually come on. Usually it comes from intuition. So intuitively you kind of think, okay, this place is too empty, let's just fill it with something and let's just see how it looks. And sometimes it works when intuition helps you to properly place and create interesting composition without necessarily trying to explain and justify placement of every object. And yeah, in most cases it's probably the things that actually works. But again, I'm thinking differently. I want to control every part of the process, and in my opinion, I would want to, or at least in my view, I would want to justify the placement of every object. Again, either it's going to be a compositional justification, which would mean that the placement, for instance, the placement, for instance, for this object, definitely compositional. So in order to create some type of compositional destruction, to prevent movement, the viewer's eye movement outside of the canvas. So this type of justification has to be present. Artists, in my opinion, have to think about these things in order to create mind-blowing composition, on at least good compositions, and not create mediocrity and not produce mediocrity. Because again, the more you implement in your work, but the more potential it gains to be the best work possible. And you can't create the best work possible if you're not putting effort into it, and knowledge and analysis and all these things. Again, mediocrity creates mediocrity. This is how world works. It's kind of harsh thing to realize at some point, but again, if you look at this positively, it kind of can become a little bit depressing when you understand that, oh come on, mediocrity creates mediocrity, but there's a bunch of mediocre artists that still create pretty interesting work, and they're popular, they have followings, they have kind of so they're not starving basically. um, but again, it all becomes it all comes to your personal view, how you see it. Again, for some people this is enough. For me personally, mediocrity, I can't stand mediocrity, and I will try to do everything in my power to avoid this mediocrity, and not just hide from it, but actually to do things to make sure that I will not create mediocre work. Um, Again, I'm not always kind of will be doing this. Sometimes, even if I will put everything that I know in work, it still could seem mediocre for someone more experienced, but at least I will know that I'm not creating mediocre work. So basically, you need to, for yourself, I guess, understand how you see things that you create. One of the things why I'm actually working that long on all my uh, projects, and I still not realize them properly, because I don't want to present mediocrity. And one of the things that I'm actually feared about starting streaming, to unintentionally create mediocre work, because again, since I'm working live, since I don't have that much time to spend on my work. How do I properly put it? Wait a sec. I don't get why people doing this. Uh, this is kind of frustrating thing when someone's is following you and then like unfollowing you. It's What's the point? It's kind of frustrates me. I'm not that accustomed to these things like following, and following. I'm not that present. I was not present in social media before. I was kind of lone wolf, just working on my craft. And again, doing all these things for me, it's like the first thing. I'm doing these things like for the first time, and still, I kind of still don't get people who follow someone and then unfollow them. Eh, I know that they're kind of aiming on something, and usually it's probably bots or something like this, and they trying to gain something from it. But come on, if you follow someone, follow it for the right reason, not just like follow for the sake of following. Um, I don't know, strange things. I guess I need to kind of get accustomed to these things, and I think my opinion on this will change with time. But still, I don't get these things when I try to follow people that I actually interested in. So either I like what they're creating, or either I like what they're doing, and that way it actually creates genuine following. So you're not follow someone just for the sake of following, for the number. Mm. But again, the problem with this is it actually creates less productive results. Yeah, so operating like this, of course, they're not going to be that much followers. But again, I'm new to this, and we'll figure out it on a go. Let's just continue to working with it. All these follower things and all things regarding social media, how to work with it, how to interact with people. It's pretty uncomfortable for me actually to write someone something. That's one of the reasons why I'm actually started streaming, to push myself out of the comfort zone, learn how to interact with people in much more social way or socially appropriate way, and for me it's still kind of awkward. Again, when you're not that socially active, you become pretty socially awkward. And sometimes it's evident, sometimes it's not. I don't know. So yeah. Okay, let's just continue. Let's just continue where we left off. Let's just continue where we left off. Okay, we actually stopped on... Yeah, I will stop doing this strange voice. Okay, where we stop? Yeah, we're trying to showcase our transformers, where to place them. So yeah, in terms of a placement, again, I want to actually showcase that if I place in some type of object or subject in a scene in particular place, I want to justify why this object or subject actually are there. So I'm not just gonna want to create it for the sake of creating. I need to understand why I'm putting this object right there. And for most of these objects, the reason why I'm actually placed them is pretty reasonable. So at least in my mind, I'm seeing these objects as things that had to be right there, either for the sake of storytelling, to create deeper storytelling, or for the sake of compositional framing, like for instance this one, or for the sake of creating depth, for the sake of creating repetitive shapes that will help us to showcase elements of design and principles of design, use principles of design, and create much more appealing work. So again, if I'm using all these things, I'm trying to make things work properly. And justify every placement. And the problem with transformer parts, it's pretty hard to justify their placements, because again, since our condition is after the battle, so like situation after the battle, in most cases battle is always hectic. It's not necessarily like composed and planned. If something, usually after the battle, there's a bunch of destruction and chaos, and in this case I can't like justify placement of every transformer parts, because again, this is a battle. If it's going to be too arranged, it's not going to look I don't know, organic, or yeah, it's not going to look organic. It's going to look forced. And this is one of the problems that I'm kind of sometimes facing by operating like this, by trying to create justifiable things, and or trying to justify every thing in my work. Sometimes you don't need justification. Sometimes you just need to place things to create some particular feeling. For instance, in this case, to present or to showcase that this thing gone through war, and this is the result of this war, this is the chaos, and this is like, I don't know, complete unpredictability. We need to showcase this in our work. And one of the problems that I'm kind of facing, I want to arrange everything ideally, but sometimes arranging things is not necessarily a thing to do, because again, in this way we need to create organic composition and not forced one. And it's pretty easy to create forced composition when you're trying to control every aspect of it. It's in some places you need to place things to just create particular feeling, and since we need to create the feeling of chaos, and yeah, basically the feeling of chaos after the battle, we have a condition and we need to stay inside of these grounds, the grounds that this condition provides, we need to figure out how to do it properly. I'm still going to put things in justifiable way, if you can say that. But I'm not going to stress about them too much. So I'll just basically place them whatever it feels right to me. Again, their initial placement going to be justified usually by perspective, and to make our flow much more organic. But it's not necessarily going to help us to create like organic scene overall. I think ideally what artists had to do usually, or at least one of the goals that artists I think has to keep in mind or try to achieve this goal is to learn how to control things that good that for the viewer does not seem forced. So again, if you're trying to control things and you're not that experienced or you're not doing that well, then probably viewer intuitively will figure out that you are forcing all these things. Even if this viewer is not like an artist itself, an artist which could probably figure out this much more faster. So basically the problem for, I guess, for an artist is to try to control things inside of the work, but control it that neat and that like perfectly, that result not going to be forced. So result has to be organic. So yeah, we work on these things when trying to manipulate somehow, in quotes, like manipulate the viewer's eye and trying to manipulate his emotions or her emotions, trying to kind of basically manipulate our viewer. It's some way, like illusionists try to, by creating and showing his tricks or her tricks, is manipulating a viewer basically. So we like magicians, artists that actually like magicians, because they kind of have to find a way to perfect their craft so well that the viewer will not figure out how they did it, but it definitely has to seem organic. Like, come on, how do you do that? How you did this? It's like awesome. It feels cool, and kind of, I get the feeling that you're trying to showcase, but I don't know. So okay, this is a deep stuff regarding psychological aspects of relationship between viewers and artists, and how artists have to have pretty good understanding what they are aiming for, because again, when we're creating something, we usually create it for the audience. Of course, we're doing it for ourselves too, but the end result is going to be present to the audience, and we need to think about these things. We need to think how we are. So every step that we're taking has to be somewhat controlled or planned. That's why I'm actually trying to use these things and talk about them. So again, we will come to them later. So let's just finally start making things. I will probably extend stream a little bit, maybe on a half hour more, because I kind of want to finish placing transformers, and on that note we will, I guess, end. But for now I will continue to place transformers, and we'll try to finish with their placements, at least for today, and tomorrow we'll continue. What's the day tomorrow? Oh, Friday. It's going to be the last day of the week for the creative stuff. Not cool. We don't have that much time to finish this work. Ideally, I would want to finish this work till the end of the month, because again, I started like at the beginning of the month, and since I'm not working on this work like 24/7, like basically I'm spending, so for instance, 1 week is basically 20 hours, so it's kind of pretty slow process. And since less streams are much shorter, we have even less time. So let's just continue. So, what's next? So I guess I will be taking as some type of template. Yeah, I will take as an example or as a sample our previous composition, this one, because I kind of like how I eventually placed things right here. But since we're changed a little bit the composition itself and the placements of the statues and made it more appropriate to the proper perspective, it definitely will bring some changes, but it's still, the placement of the transformers is still going to be I think controlled by this sketch. That way I will actually finish it much faster and will create something closer to what I imagined before. So yeah. So I wanted to place something right here, but I don't think that we need to place something right here. Rather, since we have like complete empty wall here, I would probably place something right here that would overlap with the wall. So it's not necessarily had to be. Again, since I don't understand what type of transformer parts I would place there, it's gonna creates a bit of a problem for me, because I actually don't know what type of. So right now I will just like showcase the piles of garbage. The piles of garbage will for now represent transformer parts, because again, I don't have a clue how these parts is going to look, because again, in order to understand them and figure out how they're going to work, I will need to spend time on analyzing their design, trying to figure out what type of constructional look of them and etc. So I kinda can't do this on this stage because I don't have any picture in my mind. How would I imagine them? So that's why it actually kind of pretty challenging thing to do. So for now, the only thing that we need to do is just basically establish their placement, proper placement that will help us to bring composition to some type of an end. Again, we always can create parts of the transformers that will showcase or that will bring attention to our characters, for instance like this. So it would be probably a good idea to create some type of instrument or a part of the transformers body that will basically create this thing Um, yeah, something like this would be pretty cool. Yep. So again, the placement of this object justifiable. It helps us to bring the attention to our characters, and this is could be one of the starting points for the whole composition that will lead us next. We could add additional part right here. That could create. So again, it has to be chaotic. The whole thing about this has to be chaotic, but still this chaos has to have some type of direction. So that's why we'll probably need to create some type of. Okay, let's just manipulate this rotation of this piece to make it more towards our characters. Yeah, I guess again this is a good start. I'm still trying to figure out how they are going to look, these pieces, transformer pieces, but this is a good start to try to picture how they're going to look. And again, if you're not keeping in your mind the reason why you're placing them, it's harder for you to actually picture them. For instance, one of the reasons why I'm actually kind of pictured this thing is because I not necessarily know how they're going to look in particular, but what I know that they have to help composition, they have to help flow, they have to direct the viewer's eye, they have to create interesting silhouette that will help us to make work more dynamic. So by keeping these things in my mind, it actually helps me to imagine these things even when I'm not have if I even when I don't have any vision how they look in particular. So their look kind of created by itself by these looks unnecessary. Yeah. But I will probably left this one. So yeah. Ready to do. Let's just put a little thing right here. Again, since these details are going to be not designed like crazy design, they're not going to have crazy designs. I think I would basically would just leave this like as it is and just render it simply, and that's it. It would be enough for this area, not focus that much on these things. But still, this area has to interact somehow with our active area. So I talked about interaction between areas. So I mostly talked about how to interact between your main focus or primary focus, secondary focus, and tertiary focus. But additional focus or additional area of focus has to interact with at least one of the areas too, because it helps to create this cohesion of the whole piece. And if I would place this object outside of this area, then it wouldn't be so this way these objects would just kind of fall off from picture and seem unreasonable. But this way, by creating these, and it actually kind of makes it more, whoa. The work is pretty distorted. Like my eye is gonna get comfortable with this view, and oh, it looks cool, and then whoop, you flipped it, and works seem pretty dynamic, like pretty tilted. I would say this feeling of unstableness. No, so yeah, I'm not feeling stable when I'm looking at this work. It creates some type of instability, if you can say it, or like this. Let's just check this out. Unstable, there is word, but instability, I don't think. Instability, yeah. It creates instability. But. So yeah. Okay, cool. So one object placement for the transformers I kind of figured out. And the cool thing about placing these chaotic things, we don't need to think about perspective that much, because again, ideally, if these objects would be the part of the main focus, then we would need to spend a lot of time to make them perspectively right. So we would probably need to create additional perspective points to kind of find where pivot points of the tilted objects, because again, when you're working with these type of objects that kind of following the rules of your horizon line, it's much more easier. But when you're trying to add objects like this that not necessarily following your main horizon line, then creating them becomes pretty challenging, at least properly. And most of the artists, I think, don't even construct these type of objects at all, because they're so complex, and in terms of a construction, then much more easier way to just draw them by eye. I don't know if I'm properly saying by eye, maybe by sight would be proper way to say it, but what I mean by that, by eye, is again to just measure it using your eyes and see how it looks, the right or the wrong way, and decide based on it what looks better. Yeah, so you're not using any construction lines, you're not like constructing anything, you just like right here, I didn't use any perspective lines, I just draw it as it is. So this one, for instance, is tilted right here, and it's, if we would try to picture where this surface is looking, the surface is looking right there. And come on, if it's looking right there, how could I compose from this horizon line and properly create this perspective and find its vanishing points? It's pretty crazy to construct these type of objects that usually placed in the free space. So with something, when something is grounded, basically stood on the ground, it's much easier to create, but when things started to appear in a free space, and especially when they are in a free space and they, I don't know, like placed in completely different angle, they're tilted, and they're they're tilted like this, for instance, it becomes 100% harder to construct these things. And usually the only thing that you need to kind of keep in mind and is basic understanding where your horizon is placed, and try to kind of figure out a way to create them using your eyes, because again, to construct these things, it's pretty hard. But again, if this thing is your main focus, you would probably do that, because if you're not doing this, if you're not going to do this, it would probably create problems along the way. But again, who knows? It's just my opinion. I would work on them probably. Someone would choose to not to. Okay, I'm run enough undos. I don't have that much undos, so let's just continue. Where we could place things. So I definitely not going to place anything right here. Right here has to be an empty space. I talked about that we always have to have some type of an empty space in our work, in our project, because if we will fill all spaces, it's going to be too crowded and too complex. We need to create for the viewers the place of rest. So this is going to be the place of like focus, and we have to create contrast between the places of contrast and between places of rest. And places of rest is the places where the viewer's eye are going to just in a millisecond just rest, and don't have to think about too much details and focus. So this actually creates dynamic. Free spaces usually something that helps to lead the viewer's eye in much faster way, because there's no details right here. You just like whoosh, go straight through this empty space and end up on the character, and then you see in details. Oh, cool, details. Yeah. So again, you spend time to see details here, which slows the dynamic, and then you have empty space, whoosh, quick dynamic, and again slow dynamic, then again quick dynamic, then again slow, and etc. So this way we are working with the dynamic, at least in my understanding. Yeah, let's continue. So I guess we have in about like 15 minutes probably, or about 10, or, yeah, about probably 15 minutes. So in these 15-20 minutes, let's just try to finish to work on these transformer parts. Okay, thanks for this. Now I kinda understand more how would I place these transformer parts. Again, I'm not thinking about perspective too much. I would probably make the perspective right for these objects when it comes to their placement. Yeah, this is not working. Looks strange. If something looks strange, there's a couple of reasons why it looks strange. First, perspective problems, proportional problems, or overall shape problems. or all of these things. Just not usually. Good realization. I don't know if I need this there though. It's kind of, I kind of want to place something here, but maybe it's not necessary to do it. Again, the only reason why I need to place something here is to create this type of transition, because again, if I'm not placing something here, then viewer's eye is never going to create a it's not going to make this slow transition. I need to put something right there in order to create this slow transition here, because if I don't have anything right here, then the viewer's eye kind of breaks and goes right here. It's not smooth transition at all. It's pretty fast and it's pretty, yeah, it's not working. So in order to create slow transition, I need to put something right here that will justify this movement. Again, this one creates pretty smooth transition right here or right here, whatever we want it to go. It depends. This one creates pretty smooth transition right here, and then it can go whatever. This line actually helps us to create this smooth transition. For instance, if we go here, then we go here, and then we go into slow transition right here. Bypassing this one, usually this line will help us to make this transition. So this is like, looks pretty perfect at this point. Yeah, I will definitely will come back to this. Let's just depict that something has to be here. Something definitely has to be here. Yeah, the pile of garbage. Let's assume that this is a pile of garbage. Like, for instance, bomb was blown up, and he completely destroyed and turned transformers into ashes, and this is the pile of ashes, which just could be, why not? Again, it has dynamic, which creates, right, this one. Maybe I actually use it as a pile of ashes, who knows, why not? Or I could use like the pile of ashes with a little bit of details like sticking from it. There's a bunch of unburned details that just sticking from it, and these details conveniently sticking and creating additional movement right there, right there, right there, even right there, which is basically only created for the sake of creating silhouette. But I could picture it not like, yeah, from behind of the pile, and it just like directs into a wall, and when it goes to a wall, it just basically creates this one, like yoink. Again, we're creating cycle of movement. What's next? What's next? So yeah, I kind of like this pile. It looks awesome. And also, as we see, this pile is pretty small, considering perspective for shortening. These details are pretty big. Of course, these details are pretty small. I need to figure out somehow to work on design elements, so to, again, right now they're looking like a piece of wood, but ideally I would want to create them as some type of interesting designs, like the parts of the transformers Again, it will be explored on later stages when I will try to make them more alien-like. For now, they're just shapes. Later, I will make them something more. Oh, actually, it would be cool if this one would be a little bit tilted. Yeah, it actually creates additional yeah, it helps this flow. Again, I will work on their design a little bit later. Kind of want to work on it right now, but no, we don't want to do this later. Suppressing our urge to go into details. It's not going to be beneficial at this point. Yeah, now let's just figure out what to do here. We could actually create pretty interesting contrast between piles of ashes. Yeah, like here, like right here is actual details and kind of pieces of the transformers. Right here we have pile of ashes with a unburned transformer parts. Here we have complete transformer parts just like turned to pieces, and right here we could have close-up of the pile of ashes, because again, ideally we, in terms of a design, we would need to think about repetitive shapes, and one of the ways to create again depth is to showcase similar objects or subjects in different parts of a picture plane. So foreground, midground, and background. For instance, we could use this pile of ashes as something to create this depth. For instance, we could create pile of ashes right here, which is going to be a close-up of the pile of ashes with some unburned details stick from it, from this pile. We created on foreground, we created on middle ground, and we created on foreground right here, or on a background right here, which is going to be pretty cool. For instance, right here it's already pile of ashes present. The only thing that we need to make it a little bit smaller, because again, it's much further. And we could again create a little bit. From far it actually looks like a poop. But in the end we will make it the pile of ashes. And if it's going to look like a poop in work, it actually kind of acceptable, because we are working with a comedic work. We don't need to depict some seriousness in it. So if there's going to be a comic relief in it, it's always a cool thing to do. And we also have to create some type of contrast for these pieces. So we created contrast by adding piles of ashes, where the pieces stick out of it. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty hard thing to do for the close-up, because again, I'm not picturing it that much. When you work with the small details, again, like for instance right here, you don't need to picture what's sticking out of this pile. You just draw a line and it suggests that something there. Same for this, but a little bit more details, and it looks pretty cool. But right here it actually becomes pretty hideous to look at, because you're working with a close-up. But again, the only thing that we need to think about right here is just simply creating an interesting silhouette. This is the only thing that we need right here. So it not necessarily have to be something like we draw there, like just pieces of pipe sticking out. it actually could be something like the parts of the transformer's body. Suggest that this is a pile of ashes. There's nothing here. Doesn't look pretty well, but again, as long as we have something to compare it to, then design will come. Because if we don't have something to compare it to, like, again, something is better than nothing, and if we didn't create anything here, this wouldn't benefit us in any way. So I need to create some type of thing, like chaotic thing. And again, you always go into details. It's like this urge to go into details. It's not a very good thing for us at this point, but you either way going into it. So the reason why I created this to create additional flow right here that could go there. But actually this one is more than enough, so let's just get rid of it. It still would be a cool thing to picture something here, because I don't want it to stick that obvious. So we could extend this pile, make like additional layer for it. Yeah, and again, I will think about how these save. Save constantly. Because that would be a bad thing to lose these changes. Not that I did something crazy and awesome, but still. Stretching. Oh, actually the time is already out. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of wanted to finish either way. So again, we don't have that much space right there, because again, right here I actually plan to put table accessories, and since the table accessories has to be right here, I can't put a bunch of piles of ashes right there. I could create something right here, like tiny thing, tiny parts of the transformers. I think it has to be even smaller, because again, it always has to be compared to previous one. Maybe something is going to be right here, like a couple of small pieces, and eventually I will put small pieces somewhere right here, probably. I don't know, like, again, there's parts of the transformers has to be everywhere. Don't forget that we will make these as transformer things, so either this is going to be a part of the transformer's body, or this is going to be the transformer's heads. I will think about it. Initially I wanted to make from these transformers heads, but again, it's going to be a pretty hard thing to make, but I will try to do my best again to do it. For now, let's just put something inside these cubes to suggest that they are sitting on, not on simple cubes, but on something much more complex. It will actually help us to raise questions about design. I will talk about design stage and what type of questions we are going to ask what type of questions we are going to ask. um, Thanks for the stage. So because of the stage, so what I did now is actually I'm not only drawn these things to finish my composition and create some type of flow that I need. I also added a this one could help us to go there, or something here which could lead us to our character. This one already leads us to our character. Yeah. Again, you want to create the presence of the environment, and if I would leave these and just delete them like this, it definitely would look empty. I need some type of tension, and these things are actually creating some type of tension because they are pretty sharp, and only this thing, the fact that they are sharp, is already creates some type of tension. So as humans, we tend to fear, or at least we're not feeling comfortable around sharp things, and by adding these sharp things, we're actually already kind of creating some type of, I don't know, tense situation. And again, these eyes that we're going to depict, that they're going to look on our transformers, and again, some of the statues would probably change their position. For instance, I will make them the same, again, as a repetitive element, since they're not the part of a main focus. But what I do probably is to change some of the positions that will suggest that they come to life, or come into life. The last thing that I need to add is something here. Definitely need to add something here which will create the contrast for these pieces. So basically, we are making this type of contrastual movement. No, this is not a word. So whatever, we're creating a difference in similarity, so repetition, by creating this thing. So this is the pile of garbage or ashes, this is the pile of ashes, and this is the pile of ashes. This is the first kind of thing that we are creating. So this is one of the ways that viewer could view this. So it goes right here, and it goes right here, and as we see, in almost cases, it goes through all our characters, which is an awesome thing to do. The second thing that we need to create is, okay, this one goes right here. This is like complete replica of whatever is here, and now we need to add a third thing. So we have foreground, we have background, and now we need to create midground, which is going to be right here. That way it will create this type of triangle, which again make our viewer to go through our characters. It's going to be pretty hard to depict something like we showed there. But again, when we are going to work on final pieces, going to be much more bigger size, of course. Right now I'm working with a small thumbnail. There's a reason for that. Of course, we don't need to go into much details right there, but still, knowing what we're doing, it's always a good thing. So since this thing has to go here, we need to create it the same way. So, okay, this is our wall. I think it's going to be pretty close to a wall, and it's going to look like a, I don't know, the part of a body of the transformer somehow. Going to create some type of repetitive thing for our composition, for our main perspective point, this one. So I think it's going to be good to do that. And then it's going to have these pieces that basically stands from shown from it. Again, in terms of a like final design, I will think how to showcase it better on the next stage, but for now I'm not asking questions about design. I'm just trying to figure out what type of questions I would ask about design, not necessarily trying to already answer something that I don't have a question for. So let's just for now figure out what type of questions that we are going to ask, and then it will provide a base for searching an answer. So yeah, it looks awful. It doesn't look like what I would probably imagine, but again, it still creates what I need. It creates this direction, and the only thing that I need to know is that this thing has to go like this, like in this triangle. No, that was neat. So yeah, something like this. And to create this, of course, I need to put something here too, probably some type of piece. Good thing if it's going to be overlapped with our statue, not going to be a bad thing. Never a bad thing if we would try to showcase that our statue is somewhere, to point out to our statues. This is cool thing too. Yeah, basically I think this is enough for this piece. More than enough. It looks pretty bearable. Again, I don't know what this is. It just has to be something like close to the parts of the transformers. Let's just bring back our construction lines because I need to check something. Where are our construction lines? Whippy. I don't know that. Where there? Oh, right here. So yeah, now I bring back construction lines to basically check, and let's just get rid of unnecessary things. Let's just get rid of our flow, our areas, and our background, and also our composition, to see how this looks like in more clear way. It actually looks a little bit busier than I would imagine. I think this thing has to be a little bit smaller. It's too big, and also I kind of messed up by placing it too far. There was too much lines and I didn't saw. So yeah, this one would probably be, whoa, much smaller first. Again, we are comparing them. This one is somewhere right here, but a little bit further. That makes it like this would be cool. So I think make it smaller than this one would be a wise idea. Again, it's a little bit further into space because we are analyzing it by this line. And again, the pile of garbage is in this area, and this one is a little bit deeper, so it has to be a little bit smaller. But they are not necessarily the same size again, but approximately similar. Yeah, basically this is going to be like this, something like this, which is basically pile of ashes, or pile of transformer parts and details. Again, I will figure out their design later. For now, the only thing that I needed to do is just place them. The question will be about, do I need overlap between these? Because again, when I draw statue right here, not going to be any part of the statue that will be right here, because again, probably legs is going to be somewhere right here, and yeah, so that's kind of, so I don't think that I will figure it out later. And I kind of don't like this intersection, kind of distracting. Yeah, a little bit more. So so keep in mind, I think this line, this is the place where it touches our wall. Also, we need to consider, of course, the tilt of the wall, because it definitely will make these details look differently. Just make it further from the wall. Whoa. So yeah, I will figure out how to place it properly on the later stages. And also, it kind of I kind of wanted to place it deeper in space, or make this one closer, because again, I would want to create different distribution. Yeah, this actually looks better. Wait a minute, where our original, oh yeah, this is original flip. So yeah, again, this way I am creating transition between this and this, this and this. So this creates this triangle of movement, which intersects all of our characters in their focal points, which is awesome. And the same for this one. It creates a triangle that intersects almost all of our characters. This one kind of falls off a little bit, but again, I think we will add something to it. Or we always can make this a little bit right here to make sure that this line will definitely cross past our character in some way, at least in some way. So yeah, that way we have pretty interesting, just to be a little bit bigger, I think. So yeah, again, comparison: big, medium, moderate, small. Big, moderate, small. Big, medium, small. Big, medium, small. Big, medium, small. These principles of designs go throughout the whole composition. The only way we need to use it in a smart way, of course, not just adding them for the sake of adding them. Again, repetitive elements, statues that are going to be the same size, which will help us to create a story, add story element to them. Yeah, so basically I think that's it. It looks kind of busy and chaotic, and this is probably a good thing, because again, I didn't want it to seem too forced, and it seemed pretty chaotic. And if viewer will see this as chaotic as I'm seeing it, then I done my job well. Again, it's earlier to talk about like the end results, of course, but it's pretty close to what I'm imagining, and from that point we will just continue to work on this piece, make it better until we will finish it completely and realize it. Yeah, in the end, stream is gone through 2 hours and 40 minutes, pretty normal. I planned to stream 2 hours, but again, kind of needed to extend it in order to finish it. So yeah, for now this is the end. Basically I can tell that the stage of placement, composition, proportions, at least basic one, is finished, and I guess from the next stage we are just simply going to most interesting stage is the design stage. Why interesting? Because there's going to be a bunch of reference search, which is not always interesting, but again, when we are trying to implement this reference search information into our work and trying to figure out what type of design we're going to implement in each of these objects, is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be crazy challenging. Yeah, I'm definitely going to struggle along the way, but in the end it will benefit in creating an awesome work, and, or at least decent work. Yeah, so again, I don't want to create mediocrity, and the thing that I'm trying to implement in this work, make sure that my work is not going to be mediocre. I hope it will be translated well, and if not, I will work on this in the future to make myself better, to become a better artist. And, yeah. So yeah, on that note, I guess we will finish. So we will end this stream, and yeah, basically we've finished this stage, and let's just go through a couple of reflections. It looks pretty cool, chaotic enough. Again, when we get rid of all these lines, it would probably look much better. Right now these lines kind of distracting and creating, so not all overlappings are that evident, and because of these distractions it actually seems more chaotic. But when we actually get rid of them, and when we add light, when we add shadows, when we add like the atmosphere, I definitely picture it as something pretty cool. So yeah, again, the only thing that I will need to add is small details of the transformers on the floor, but again, I can add them in any time. So if I'm not spending time to add them right now, it's not that big of a deal, because we could add this even on the final stages, because again, we're not going to render our floor that much. It's still going to have some type of a texture to it, but yeah, there's going to be an empty spaces when we always can add something interesting to add to our story. So yeah, on that note, I will finish and see you in the next stream. Bye bye.